My name is Chris Colebrook. This is part of Unit 5 Assignment 2, my submission to the British Academy of Photography as part of my Higher National Diploma in Photography. In this assignment I have fictitiously been asked to produce an image for a local theatre company to help advertise their production of Romeo and Juliet. The slideshow that you're about to see is actually designed as a PowerPoint type presentation and would normally be presented in that way, but due to the current restrictions that's not possible to do, so I have turned it into a slideshow. So we're just going to have a very brief look at the central complexes of the play and how they may actually influence the image that we come up with. Romeo and Juliet is a transitional play in that it starts off with a degree of comic violence, becomes a romance, and then later a tragedy, which is what most people recognise actually about the play. So I looked at some aspects of the play where the play actually refers to light, and light of course is something that's very important in photography. Photography is actually means light drawing from the Greek. And there's a couple of extracts here. Romeo describes Juliet a couple of times as light. For example, he says, "Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright." And also as the light emanating from angels. "Oh, speak again, bright angel." And there are many other similar references that Romeo makes about Juliet. And Juliet also describes Romeo in a similar way, except she infers that he banishes the darkness of the night. She says, "Not impute this yielding light, love, which the dark night hath discovered." And later she says, "Take Romeo and cut him into little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun." And eventually in the play, obviously, darkness triumphs over light. From nearly the final scene, "A glooming peace this morning with it brings, the sun for sorrow will not show his head." Now, I have to admit, I am not particularly familiar with the play. I did watch a version of it many years ago with Leonardo DiCaprio, where it was set in the 20th century, and I can't really remember it very well. I thought it was quite good, I think. So, for me, as part of my education, I actually felt it was necessary to watch a couple of movies, and I've done that. The first movie I watched was Franco Zeffirelli's 1968 movie. The reason I watched it is regarded by many people as one of the definitive movies ever made of this play. And I actually watched it not expecting very much. After all, it was made a long time ago. But I have to admit, I was blown away by it. It really is an amazing movie. And the lead in it, if you like, was played by a gentleman called Leonard Whiting, who was 17, and the female lead was Olivia Hussey, and she was just 15. So actually these two actors were very close to the age of the real characters. Romeo's age is not known in the play, but he's thought to be not older than 20, and Juliet, we know, is not yet 14. In the play actually it says that she will be 14 come Lammastide, which is in 2 weeks' time, which of course she never gets to see. And how does this movie, or the images from the movie, affect any image I might come up with? Well, the movie is incredibly carefully shot. It's so well framed, and there's a lot of very dramatic lighting in the movie, a lot of use of dark backgrounds, a lot of use of colour to signify danger, and also a lot of use of lighting to signify romance, if you like. The bedroom scene, and there is one, is really beautifully lit and just a very beautiful scene, and this contrasts a lot with the death scene, where it's very darkly lit, and both the characters wear very dark clothing. So there's a lot of use of light and dark, as I said earlier on. The second movie I watched, which I've already mentioned, directed by Baz Luhrmann, I don't know whether that's a good pronunciation, and released in 1996. Had been a personal favourite of mine, I think, to be honest, eclipsed by the previous movie. This movie again uses a lot of imagery very similar to the 1968 version in many ways. A lot of the same colours, a lot of very dark backgrounds, a lot of reds, and a lot of times the darkness is used to signify something sinister happening. The bedroom scene, again included in this movie, is lit almost exactly the same way as the 1968 movie, and is really quite remarkable that again they've used the likeness of the beautiful bedroom scene with the two lovers, and then contrasted again with the death scene where everything is very dark, and again they're wearing dark clothing. The last production I looked at was actually a stage version, which was done in 2015, directed by David Livereux, and it starred Orlando Bloom, which probably attracted a lot of people to go and see it. It had very mixed reviews. I wasn't able to actually find a video version of it. It was recorded at one stage. I couldn't find it, but I have looked at a lot of the images, and it actually looks quite visually stunning. Probably more than any of the others, or the previous two movies that I've actually mentioned. This one again uses darkness and light really quite dramatically. One thing is the female lead is actually black. She, however, often wears very light coloured clothing, very beautiful clothing, and the male lead, Orlando, he's dark. He's got very dark hair. He wears dark clothing. He rides a black motorcycle, again to perhaps suggest that there's something maybe sinister about him. And in one particular image, which I really like, Romeo is presenting Juliet with a large balloon, and the balloon is white. But it's being done against a dark background, so there's always this sinisterness, underlying the whole drama, if you like, and again portrayed using darkness and light. So the next thing I looked at was the kind of moods that are portrayed in the play, and the first one I came up with actually was an overwhelming feeling of joy. Once you've got over the initial comic sort of fight scenes and that type of thing, you get Shakespeare takes you very quickly into the romance, and it's very obviously like a first romance for the couple, and it's very joyous, and actually very moving, and so that is some of the first impression that I get when looking at it, and again these colours these emotions are very much represented by colours that are bright whites and that sort of thing, but again there's always this underlying sinisterness, and these are often represented by blacks and reds. The second mood that I found in the play, and I'm going to describe this as macho, and this comes over in all three versions really, that Romeo is very much if not a tough guy, he's kind of a warrior. He's a street-wise guy, and this is kind of represented by the clothing he wears. In almost all the productions he wears dark clothing, that is in ways maybe sinister, and that is very much the way that he is portrayed. And so now I've looked at Romeo, kind of a brief look at Juliet. The character of Juliet is I've come up with the word fragility, partly because we assume that she's a virgin, and partly because she is very young still, and I wouldn't describe her maybe as naive, but that probably wouldn't be far off. She's certainly a lot younger than Romeo, and her life often seems, especially even in some of the early romantic scenes, you often worry for her, even if you didn't know what the ending was going to be. You often worry that she's fallen in love with this Romeo really far too quickly. And the final mood that I came up with, and this was a difficult one, but I came up with the word despair. And the relationship, the situation that the two central characters find themselves in, becomes increasingly desperate, and ultimately they in the final scene they fall into a state of despair where both of them take their own lives, and this is again represented very strongly by all these scenes being very dark, very ominous, if you like, and in many of them a lot of selective lighting is also used. So one of the requirements that my client has given me is that the image should have impact, i.e. that somebody looking at it should remember it quite quickly. Also, I understand that it needs to convey the story, which is a love story, of course, and I've put down here communicate the sense of drama. It is a very dramatic play, there's no getting away from that, and I've made a note here about providing a hint of the ending. This is, to a certain extent, most people know a little bit about Romeo and Juliet, and if you ask them, most people know that actually they both kill themselves, and so I feel it is important for there to be something that people can associate with, and I've also put be memorable, and I guess that's the same as having impact in many ways. And now I come on to a couple of inspirational images. I looked at many images, still life images, because that's kind of what I'm restricted to using in this instance. This particular one with the dagger and the roses I found had a lot of impact. There's things I don't like about it. I don't like the spiky sort of handle really very much, but I like the crucifix form of it. I like that that is actually something that's actually used in the later film as well. It's also quite a beautiful image, and there is a fragility maybe about not just the roses themselves, but the little branches that are coming off of it. The second inspirational image I have used is an image from the final scene from Franco Zeffirelli's 1968 movie. It's a masterpiece, frankly. I love the way the lighting is basically bearing down on the faces of the two main characters. The positioning. Nobody looking at this image can be left in any doubt what's going on. It really emphasises the dramatic, the despair, the total loss of any hope that in this case the Juliet has, and there's no denying its sense of drama. So now let's have a quick look at the image that I'm actually proposing. It's a fairly basic still life image in many respects, but I quite like the simplicity of the design. I'm going to veer away from tradition a little bit on this, in so much as the rose I'm actually going to use is actually going to be white. There's no mention in the play that the rose is red. Juliet actually describes Romeo as a rose, but she doesn't specify that it's red, and I like the idea of white. I think it has more impact, and perhaps it looks a little bit more fragile as well. Also, I feel this uses a lot of symbolism. There's the dagger and the rose. It's very hard to get away from the symbolism of those two. One is beautiful and fragile, and the other one is vicious. And I also believe the final image will be quite a dramatic image and quite recognisable as well. So just to move on to the way I intend to light this image, I'm going to take cues from Franco Zeffirelli. I'm not a genius like him, but again I intend to use quite selective lighting to highlight the main aspects of the image. This will be done in various ways, of course, in my studio, but I think it's really important to put emphasis on the actual subject, and in many ways kind of recreating the beam of light that you see coming down from above in Franco Zeffirelli's image, which was the second inspirational image that I included. Also in this image I intend to darken the foreground of the image a little bit. Again, this helps with emphasis on the subject, and also in the actual final image we'll allow a place where writing and wording can also be deployed. And lastly, I intend to employ a horizon line. This will probably be in respect of some type of tabletop or boarding that obviously I can stab the dagger into. I want it to look realistic and I want it to look dramatic, and I kind of am thinking of using boarding myself to represent the boards of a theatre on the stage. Obviously, from these very basic drawings, it may be difficult to envisage the final outcome, but I actually believe that even looking at these very simple drawings that I've done, that it still hints at what play you're looking at, and hopefully is still to some degree memorable. And lastly, I'd just like to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. And that's the end of the presentation. On a personal note, I would like to add that if you have never seen Franco Zeffirelli's 1968 version of Romeo and Juliet, seriously put it on your bucket list. It really surprised me, and it's probably one of the most memorable films I've actually ever watched. And thank you very much.